snack? Need a Frito?
I do not need a snack.
We went to the movies to see Odyssey,
Oh, did you?
and then it ended, and we said we have just enough time.
Oh, you saw
I'm
saw
like,
it just now. You saw it.
we just left the movie.
And what'd you think of it?
I'm glad I saw it. I don't think I'd tell anybody to go rush and see it.
That's so interesting, because it was touted.
Matt Damon was very good.
He'll
But
get it.
everything else was. It's a long movie.
He'll be nominated for an Oscar
You think
for
so?
it, and so will the guy John Leguizamo,
Oh.
who played like a prophet type thing.
Oh,
He will be.
Tiresias.
He
It
will
was
be.
worth seeing, but I felt like
Yeah.
go rush to see it. It's a
The
long
reviews have been pretty scathing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
they haven't been good.
yeah. I mean, it'll
And you
get.
have to have recliner seats to sit through.
Yeah. Go to Cedar Lee.
Cedar Lee,
Has
and
the
also
recliners.
down in the valley, they have recliner seats
Yeah.
as well.
Cedar Lee.
Monday's senior day.
Oh, nice.
All day.
Nice. Good evening, everybody. So nice to see you. Welcome to those who are live streaming. If I put this here, it's in my face. So I'm going to just try to have it close by. If you can't hear me, just raise your hand. It's an attempt at humor. So, first of all, I didn't know how many people to expect, so we may not have sheets for everybody. Are there those who don't have them at all? Okay, maybe, yeah, great. A couple of more people are coming, so, well, they're going the other direction. Okay. Sorry. I think we're okay. Can everybody see a copy? Okay, very good. So this is the third part in our Elul series, Monday nights in the month of Elul, preceding the month of Tishrei. You've heard from Rabbi Molbaum and I think Rabbi Caruso. Can't remember who's on next week, maybe Rabbi Dadun. Okay, very good. So as you can see here from these sheets, what I've tried to do in preparation for the holidays, which are days of introspection, is to ask the question, why are we here? By that, I don't mean why are we in Beechwood, but why are we here on Earth? Is it just a matter of living out our days one day at a time, or do we have work to do? Or as the third, fourth line at the title suggests, do we have a vocation? And vocation, the word vocation comes from the Latin word to call or to be called. Are we called to do certain things in life? That is life a product of a sense that we live in a moral universe in which values exist and make a difference. So the title, why are we here? Fundamental Jewish values. And the next line is sort of a dare on my part. It's a quote from the biblical book of Leviticus. You shall be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy. And this suggests the notion in the fourth line, the Jewish vocation climbing the ladder. If we see this spatially, you shall be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy, as a kind of trajectory. God is here, we are here. Can we climb the ladder toward holiness? To emulate not only God's deeds, but what are we called to do? The reason that it's a dare is that it suggests that if you don't believe in God, this can't make sense to you. And that is not an implication I'd like to promote. To me, God can be a lot of things. To traditional believers, God is something of an individual who has attributes, can hear, can speak, can hear prayer, can oversee the events of the world. To me, that is a possible meaning. It's not the meaning I embrace. For me, the notion of God suggests transcendence, that we're not just here all by ourselves. The great philosopher Martin Heidegger described our lives as, I'll use a fancy German word here, Geworfenheit, to be thrown into existence. That's what he thought existence was. We're just hurled into here, and we live out our lives trying to do the best we can in a universe in which there are no values, but only opinions and subjective ideas. And I think the idea of God is the suggestion that there is a transcendent realm, in the sense that we can strive for more. We can strive to be higher. Subjectivity, preference, is not all there is in the realm of values. So that's what, to me, that wonderful statement means. There are standards. We have the opportunity. We are called to try to bring them into our lives, to climb that ladder. So what I have done here is to bring 6 different values. It's a subjective list. When I made a list from which I chose these 6, there were about 20 of them. I think if we have time at the end, we probably won't, but if we do, what values do you think in the list you might have made belong here on this list? So I do not regard these 6 as the top 6, period. They're just the values that occurred to me as I was thinking about it. And let's just look at them quickly. Upholding human dignity. You can see that for each topic, I've brought a couple of passages to elaborate upon. On page 2, on the back side of page 1, strengthening the Jewish family. You can see I use ing words here. The process of upholding, the process of strengthening. That's what we're called to do, according to the way I'm thinking about it here. Embracing Jewish peoplehood. Page 4, pursuing righteousness, which has the most excerpts. On page 6, embracing hope. And then on page 7, supporting Israel and its values. And if we don't get there, what I mean by this is 2 things which can be in tension with one another. Supporting Israel, which to me is a soft absolute. Soft because I think there is another reality that has to go into this conversation, and that is the values that Israel stands on. And what I've done here after page 7, on page 8, I have brought an excerpt from the Declaration of Independence. These are not my values, but the values that the state of Israel announced at its beginning. Deb? I mean the state of Israel. Yes, yes, yes. So, let's begin. I think if we're going to make it significantly through these sheets, we don't want to stop for too much discussion, but I don't want to do all the talking here. So if you have a question or a comment, raise your hand at a certain point, and I'll say to you, let's hold this until later, if I feel. By that I didn't mean every single one. Maybe some of them I can answer right away. Ken?
So, Rabbi, are you intending a specific order here of importance?
No. No order of importance at all. Yeah. Okay, upholding human dignity. You can see I've got a quote from the book of Genesis and also from Rabbi Joseph Telushkin in his lovely book, Jewish Literacy. And God created man in his image. An interesting question is, to what or to whom does the word man refer? And we get the answer right away. In the image of God, he created him male and female. He created them. So man here stands for humankind. We do not yet have the division into male and female, which comes later. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fertile and increase, fill the earth and master it, and rule the fish of the sea, birds of the sky, and all living things that creep on earth." We're given a vocation here. In Genesis 1 is to master the earth. In Genesis 2, we go in the other direction, to guard the garden and to tend it. In other words, the book of Genesis has two mandates for human beings: to step forward and to step back. To step forward, as Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik in his lovely article, The Lonely Man of Faith, says, we're given the mandate to engage in science and technology. Damming the rivers is part of the biblical mandate for human beings. Fill the earth and master it. While in Genesis 2, step back, tend the garden, and be sure that you're caring for the earth, okay? So there is a dual vocation for human beings. But you can see that we, according to Genesis, are made in the image of God. And you think of God as representing absolute value. Then human beings made in the image of God have absolute value too. And this is not a claim that the ancient Greeks sometimes made, is that a distinction between civilized peoples and barbarians. Barbarians, the word barbarian comes from the sound barbar, gibberish, not real language. So the Greeks, not all of them, divided human beings ontologically. By that I mean in terms of reality, not in terms of what we achieve, as having different values. Whereas the Bible announces from the beginning, anyone who is a human being is made in the image of God, suggesting an absolute dignity. And of course, if people have an absolute dignity, then the rest of society has an obligation to enable people to live in accordance with that dignity. And so differences of outcomes is a problem for society, according to this idea. Let's look at Telushkin. One of the most eloquent Jewish statements about the value of human life comes from a very odd source. The admonition administered by ancient Jewish courts to witnesses testifying in capital cases. In addition to the expected warnings against perjury, the judges offered a commentary on why God originally populated the world with only one person, Adam. Okay, so you can see this passage disagrees with what I've claimed about the first passage, that it's not just Adam, but it's also, it's not even Adam, it's still undifferentiated humanity. Okay. To teach you, the witnesses were warned, that whosoever destroys one life is considered by the Torah as if he destroyed an entire world. Okay? So this is a way of saying that one human being is really worth qualitatively, if not quantitatively, the entire world. and it does not distinguish among which human beings that is. And whoever saves one life is considered by the Torah as if he saved an entire world. Another way of talking about surpassing absolute dignity. Having suggested at least one ethical lesson that can be learned from Adam's singular creation, the rabbis propose two others. God created all of mankind through Adam for the sake of peace between people, so that no one can say to his neighbor, my father, my ancestry is greater than yours, since all are descended from, in the language I want to use, one couple. Okay? So not to start with a lot of people is to say there is no distinction in terms of your ancestry. We all come from the same place, and therefore we all have the same value. Furthermore, that first word in a line there, if you're having difficulty finding it, Adam's creation proclaims the greatness of God. For when a man strikes many coins from one mold, they are all identical to each other. But the King of Kings, God, fashioned every human being with the stamp of Adam, and not one of them is identical to his fellow. Today, it sometimes seems as if knowledge of each person's uniqueness is sadly confined to criminologists, who are aware that all people, even identical twins, have distinctive fingerprints, okay? So the same mold, namely from the same value source, but gives variety, the variety we know. But I think this passage is suggesting, don't be beguiled by the variety. And the variety in a number of ways. Achievement, ability, and all the ways in which we're distinguished. Because those distinctions are insignificant over and against the absolute dignity that we have. Gravitas, weightiness. Okay. Strengthening the Jewish family. So here is a passage from the great commentator Rashi, who lived in the 12th, really the 11th century, wrote a commentary on every book of the Bible and the entire Talmud. And Rashi is recognized as perhaps the preeminent commentator for a couple of reasons. First of all, he's terse. He doesn't go on and on and on. Secondly, he brings, as you'll see here, elements from rabbinic literature. So you can see at the bottom of this passage that Sifra, which is a midrash on the book of Leviticus, is that right, Sifra? And Kiddushin, the Talmudic tractate, Kiddushin, Holiness, page 31b. So while you're reading relatively terse comments, you're also getting a kind of span of rabbinic literature. And this is why Rashi is so important. So he is making a comment on, and I apologize for the faintness of the typeface here, it's too bad, but at the upper right, in a line by itself, Aviv, Imo v'aviv tira'u. Mother and father you shall revere. The translation in the first line says fear. Fear is a part of reverence. If I revere my parents, they still have the capacity to punish me. And therefore, fear can be a kind of aspect of reverence. Okay, so he's quoting the passage, every one of you shall fear his mother and his father. Okay, and here it is. You can see that this passage is about family. So here's Rashi. Here Scripture mentions the mother before the father because it is manifest to him, capital H, God, that the child fears the father more than the mother, and therefore by mentioning the mother first, Scripture stresses the duty of fearing her as well. Okay? So, wait till your father comes home. He'll mete out the punishment. Here Rashi is explaining why that may be the case. But we mention the mother first because in respect to respect, one treats the parents as equals. Okay? In the case of honoring one's parents, you see where I am? Now that is a word not used here in our biblical passage, but honor is used in another famous passage where treating parents is mentioned, the Ten Commandments. Kabed. Kabed means to give weight to or honor, okay? So Rashi is bringing in two verbs that are to describe the relationship between children and their parents. Revere, to fear, and now he's bringing in the Ten Commandments from another biblical book, from the book of Exodus. In the case of honoring one's parents, however, Scripture mentions the father before the mother. See, notice what a close reader Rashi is. Leviticus, mother and father. Exodus, father and mother. Now, there are no ultimate accidents in biblical literature. If something looks like a problem or something incoherent, do not worry. There is a commentator who has straightened it out. I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but there is a powerful assumption at work here, and that is the Bible is a book of enormous, some hidden riches. And therefore it's worth exploring in detail, even mother, father, father, mother. I might say one author did this, another author did this. Oh no, there's a meaning to this distinction. So let's go on. Scripture mentions the father before the mother because it's manifest to him, to God, that the child honors the mother more than the father because she endeavors to win him over by kindly words. Therefore, by mentioning the father first, Scripture emphasizes the duty of honoring him. Okay? Reverence and honor both apply to both parents. And that's a quote from Kiddushin, as you can see in the parentheses. Now the passage goes on at Shabtotai Tishmoru, and my Sabbaths you shall keep. So the Leviticus passage says, I'm the Lord your God. You shall revere your mother and father and keep my Sabbaths. So now Rashi is wondering whether there's a bit of a narrative here, a development among these topics. Scripture places the commandment of observing the Sabbath immediately after fearing one's father in order to, in other words, this was no accident, in order to suggest the following. Although I admonish you regarding the fear due your father, yet if he bids you desecrate the Sabbath, do not listen to him. That's why we have the development in this passage from parents to Sabbath, because there is an increase in value here. So, what does this suggest about honoring parents? This is not an absolute. There is something that extends over both, that both parents and children have the duty of keeping the Sabbath. And therefore, Your parent, whom you honor and whom you revere, can get it wrong. And if they do not listen to him. Now, look, this in one stroke transforms the meaning of the family. We could say that the family is a hierarchy of power, and the parents have it and the children don't. And therefore we have this idea of parental absolute power. What your parents say to you, do. You're commanded to revere and to honor them, and this is the way to do it. At this point, the family becomes not only its own hierarchical independent unit, it becomes a hierarchy as part of another set of values. The family is now a pedagogical unit. That we have to teach that there are parental prerogatives, but there are also values which transcend those prerogatives. And a wise parent in this universe is not going to insist, I am right, because the tradition says you are right if you are following what transcends you, values. Let's go on here. If he says desecrate the Sabbath, don't listen to him. And the same is the case with any of the other commandments. Now that's an important addition, isn't it? If I didn't add that addition, I might say, well, he can only get it wrong if he says desecrate the Sabbath. No, that was just an example of a much larger reality. This, it is evident, is the meaning, since Scripture adds at the end of this passage, Ani Adonai Elohechem, I am the Lord your God. Both you and your father, and notice in the parentheses, I'm the Lord your God, plural. Elohechem, the chem suffix is plural. You're both bound to obey God, who is the deliverer of the commandments. Both you and your father are equally bound to honor me. Do not therefore obey him if it results in making my words of no effect. And Rashi is not making this up. He's quoted two rabbinic sources, the Sifra and the Talmud tractate. Okay? So the family now becomes a moral educational unit if it does it right. Because the parent now has a mandate. Teach the children the commandments by which we are to live and for which we are instruments. The family is not an intrinsic good, ultimately. It's an instrumental good for the service of society. Okay? So, strengthening the Jewish family, we can now see what that means. The Romans, in Rome, there was this idea, patria potestas, I think I've got that right, that the parent has absolute power. That is not this model at all. Because in a certain way, if the family is an enclosed unit, and what's right is what is being articulated inside the family, what is transmitted to the children? All that matters is power. And so when you become a parent, that's what you should exercise, absolute power. And if you are abused by the absolute power of the parent, you are likely to learn from that this is the way of managing a family. Whereas if the family is an instrument for the social good, then power is not ultimate. It's whether or not you can transmit values. Very powerful. And I think that, my attempt here is when I use the ing words, strengthening the Jewish family, we might say, well, why? Why is that a main value? And here Rashi is explaining to us what is at stake in the nature of the family. Let's just go on a little bit. So, what is, I'm at the last couple of words, five lines from the bottom. What is implied by the term mora, revere? So Rashi is now, he's done certain things here, and now he's going to look at other elements in this passage. That one should not sit in his father's seat, nor speak in his stead when he is expected to speak, nor contradict his words. There is hierarchy, and therefore respect for the father's preeminence in the family. Because after all, the parents are teachers. When Noah became drunk, he was no longer capable of teaching his children because he couldn't be respected. So respect, the parent needs to earn it, but the children need to give it to the parents so that we can learn from the parents. So separation. Reverence means I recognize that I'm on a lower level than my parents, which doesn't eliminate the need for the parents to recognize that they're instruments themselves. And what, now on third line from the bottom, is implied in the term kavod, honor. That the child gives the parents something to eat and drink, provides them with clothes and shoes, leads them into the room and out if they are infirm. Reverence is a stepping back. Honor is a stepping forward. So we have a duality here. Don't you see how brilliant? This is a whole world about the fundamental institution of a society, healthy or not. And then a quick quote at the bottom from Moses Maimonides' Guide of the Perplexed. He says that the good order of the household, a household that is well run, is the first part of the city. So we learn in our homes at best how to be good citizens, so that the family becomes many things. A teaching unit, a way of manifesting two basic values, reverence and honor, and also feeds the society educated, moral individuals to be good citizens. I've always loved this passage, which is the first part of the city. I have to confess that this morning when I was looking for this passage, I took out my Guide for the Perplexed. It's got 700 pages. I think I knew within 100 pages where this line was. And I asked myself, should I go through it? Because inevitably I was going to, you know how we do when we skim, we sort of get drowsy and we don't pay close attention. I asked AI, where is this line in the Guide for the Perplexed? You know, and I thought, well, I'll go get a snack and make some coffee, and by the time I get back, AI will have it for me. Just like that. AI said, Part 3, Chapter 41. Oh my gosh, what a world. Okay, so let's pause for a second. Questions, comments? Gosh, Rashi sold us, didn't he? Okay, embracing Jewish peoplehood on page 3. Yeah, Bev.
Can't hear you.
Say it a little louder.
Why is it up to the kids to like provide food and drink to the parents?
Yeah.
Other way around?
Okay, so good. So these are extensions of the notions of stepping back, don't sit in your father's chair, and stepping forward. And the children have an obligation, if the parents can't manage for themselves, to do this for the family. Another commentary asks the question, if I'm going to have large expenses in doing this as a child, that it's important that the parents pay for these things if they can, so not to overburden the children. So I think the domain of this conversation is the family, and not the larger society. Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I imagine that these are imperatives that apply as long as our parents are alive, and as long as they're alive, we are their children. Look, even when they are no longer alive, we continue to be their children. I mean, we do speak well of them in public whenever we do. We go to visit their graves. Time does not obviate the fact that we continue always to be our parents' children. But here, I think that the growth of the family does not change these things. But your question is an important example of something that happens in the tradition. So Rashi has his comment. The comment raises questions. Here's one. So we not only have the Torah and Rashi's commentary on the Torah, we have a variety of different commentaries on the Torah, right? We have Nachmanides, we have Sforno, and so on and so on. So we have a variety of commentaries, some of them emphasizing one thing, some another. We also have another genre, commentaries on the commentary. There are what are called super commentaries. Why did Rashi say this? What is Rashi's source? Why didn't he quote this passage rather than this passage? And so on. So you can see that though in practical terms, we need to know how to act. But in broader terms, we have to recognize that it's hard to nail down once and for all time anything. And therefore, because times change, needs change, new realities appear, but also the conversation itself is not just in order to clarify certain things. The conversation is a mode of being Jewish. And therefore, there will never be a final commentary. I mean, we have commentaries on what time in the morning you're late to fill in. But what about people out in space? When do they late to fill in? Morning happens, I take it, with more regularity. Now, that's just a trivial example of how new circumstances can create new questions. And if, as the rabbis say about Torah, turn it and turn it, everything is in it, there should be no subject in principle which cannot be illuminated by the Torah. You know the idea that there are 613 commandments in the Torah, okay? Hard to count them. But the idea here, which is also a commentary, is that the commandments are divided into positive commandments and negative commandments. There happen to be 248 positive commandments and 365 negative commandments. Why? Two answers possible. It's arbitrary. That is never a good answer. There are 248 parts of my body and 365 days in the year. You'll have to accept the 248 idea. In other words, 613 is a magic number. It encompasses all of me all the time, which means there can be no more than 613 commandments. Maimonides wrote a 14-volume study of the history of Jewish law from Moses to Moses. And in order to decide what are Torah commandments and what are rabbinic commandments, he wrote an introduction to his Mishnah Torah, where he listed every single one of the commandments, the positives and the negatives. So we have here kind of a vast discourse that goes on from generation to generation. Let's look at page 3. So, embracing Jewish peoplehood. The entire Jewish people and all those who attach themselves to them are like brothers. Okay? So this is the idea, quote from Deuteronomy, that the Jewish people is a family. We can understand ourselves as brothers and sisters. You are, and Deuteronomy states, you are children of the Lord your God. We're all children of God as parent, and therefore, by definition, we're brothers and sisters. And if a brother will not show mercy to a brother, who will show mercy to them? To whom do the poor of Israel lift up their eyes? To Gentiles who hate them and pursue them? That may not be a line we would write so baldly today, but this is in the Middle Ages when things were very, very rough. Their eyes are turned to their brethren alone. This sense of kinship, fraternity, and the family bond is at the heart of the idea of Kol Yisrael Arevin Zeh Bazeh. All Jews are responsible for one another. Very famous passage. It's articulated all the time. Or as Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai put it, when one Jew is injured, all Jews feel the pain. So this notion of the cohesiveness, the coherence, the mutuality of the Jewish community. And I think there's something very powerful about the idea in general. It's an extension of the notion of the human family to subsets within the Jewish family. The humanity as a family, while the Jewish people, a subset of humanity, is also a family. And I think this is an idea which, when embraced, helps to maintain the strength of a Jewish community. That's why I think it's really an important value. Why is Judaism based on this model of the family? Partly to tell us that God didn't choose an elite of the righteous or a sect of the like-minded. He chose a family, Abraham and Sarah's descendants, extended through time. The family is the most powerful vehicle of continuity. And the kinds of changes Jews were expected to make to the world could not be achieved in a single generation. One might raise an objection. Is somebody who converts to Judaism part of the family? In literal terms, they are not children of Abraham and Sarah, the lineage. But there is a famous responsum to the question, is a convert part of the family? That says, when you convert, you become a child of Abraham and Sarah. Your status changes. So that conversion is not a barrier to being a full member of the community. And I've talked to people who have converted over the years, and oftentimes they feel that they're not fully accepted by their congregation or by a subset of the congregation. And I always quote this responsum, that you become, there's a magic transformation which gives you an equal place, an equal status in the tree of Judaism. The family, I'm at the end of about 5 lines from the bottom, is the most powerful vehicle of continuity, just repeating what we said in idea 2. And the kinds of changes Jews were expected to make to the world could not be achieved in a single generation. Hence the importance of the family as a place of education, quoting the V'ahavta, right? You shall teach these things to your children repeatedly. The word for teach is the intensive Hebrew of the word to teach, v'shinantam. Not just to teach, but to teach regularly, to teach intensively. And of handing the story on, especially on Pesach, through the Seder service. So you can see there's an interplay between the family and the community. The family feeds the community is a kind of family. Okay, let's turn to page 4. Pursuing righteousness. So for this, I bring 2 pages of material because I think that this is really a very important idea. Okay. So, this is a quote from Leviticus. You shall not hate your kinsfolk in your heart. Reprove or chastise your kinsman, but incur no guilt because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your countrymen. Love your fellow as yourself. I am the Lord. Now, to me, this is a self-enclosed unit. Doesn't look that way in the text because you can see it moves from hate to love. Don't hate, love your neighbor. These are 2 of the 5 commandments in this brief passage. 1, don't hate your kinsfolk in your heart. 2, chastise your kinsman, but incur no guilt because of him. 3, don't take vengeance. 4, don't bear a grudge. 5, love your neighbor. So in other words, this passage can be divided into 2 parts. Commandment 1 and 5, starting point and the goal. And commandments 2, 3, and 4, which are the vehicles for moving from hate to love. How do we get from hate to love? By chastise your fellow, don't bear vengeance, don't bear a grudge. Seriously? Chastise somebody? This is a way to do that, to rebuke somebody? So that if this idea is going to work, that these are the 3 important actions through which we can get from hate to love, we'd better take a close look at what reprove means. What are its advantages and what are its disadvantages? So we have our work cut out for us. And that's why there's so much on these pages. To me, this is a very spectacular set of ideas here because it really tells us how to move from our baser instincts, our capacity for hate, to a love that is likely to create a coherent community. Except we'll have to ask, what is love? Is the love that is being forwarded here the pitter-patter of the heart? Oh gosh, wow, when I see you, gee, my gosh. Or is it something else? If it's the pitter-patter of the heart, that's important. But that's not a social good. That doesn't help society to create coherence and value. So, here we go. What we have here is Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah, the laws of ethical dispositions. Maimonides organized the 613 commandments of the Torah and all the elaborate interpretations for the previous 2,500 years. Moses in about 1300 before the Common Era, Maimonides 1200. So the skeleton of the 14-volume Mishnah Torah are the commandments, filled in by 2,500 years of commentary. And here is his distillation of the commentary on these questions. Okay? By the way, just another brief aside. So I've said to you and showed how the 613 becomes an absolute number, all of me, all the time. And so there has always been a huge resistance to adding another commandment to the list because, let's face it, what is greater than totality? What's greater than everything? Except one modern philosopher had the nerve to create the 614th commandment. Anybody know who that is and what the commandment is? So the philosopher is Emil Fackenheim, and his 614th commandment is, after the Holocaust, do not give Hitler a posthumous victory by weakening your fidelity to Judaism, by creating a problem for Judaism, because that's what Hitler wanted. So we are commanded after the Holocaust to act in a certain way and not to act in a certain way. Of course, he was reviled for that because the idea is, hey, if there's some good, we can find it somewhere in the 613. So that's a very interesting move on his part. And also, I think it indicates how at least Fackenheim, and perhaps we too, think that post-Holocaust Judaism is an absolutely unique entity with different kinds of imperatives. We live in a different kind of world. Okay, so let's go on here. So I'm here right after Leviticus. When a man sins against another, the injured party should not hate the offender, keep silent, as it is said concerning the wicked, and Absalom spoke to Amnon neither good nor evil, for Absalom hated Amnon. These are two sons of King David. This was an episode that took place. Amnon raped Absalom's daughter. Absalom kept it to, kept it to himself. That was not a good thing. But it is his duty to inform the offender and say to him, why did you do this to me? Why did you sin against me in this matter? And thus it is said, you shall surely rebuke your neighbor. If the offender repents and pleads for forgiveness, he should be forgiven. That itself is potent, isn't it? And how hard it is to do if we feel really abused. To just, if somebody says, I'm sorry, that may not feel like enough for us. But look, this is all about the coherence of community, too. We're trying to minimize harsh feelings one for another, and that's behind this idea. If the offender pleads, repents and pleads, be forgiven. The forgiver shouldn't be obdurate, as it is said, and Abraham prayed to God. See, for Abimelech, who did something wrong, Abimelech said, I'm sorry, and Abraham forgave him. It's always good to have a precedent among biblical characters. If one observes that a person committed a sin or walks in a way that is not good, it's a duty to bring the erring man back to the right path and to point out to him that he is wronging himself by his evil courses. As it is said, you shall surely rebuke your neighbor. Talk to this person. He who rebukes another, whether for offenses against the rebuker himself or sins against God, should administer the rebuke in private, speak to the offender gently and tenderly, and point out that he's only speaking for the wrongdoer's own good, to secure for him life in the world to come. So the world to come is a complicated idea. It can either be taken literally, because though the Bible really has no place for life after death, the rabbis created the afterworld, and really in three ways. immortality of the soul, resurrection of the body, and in the Middle Ages, reincarnation. Okay? So the world to come can be taken literally from the rabbinic point of view. By rabbi, I mean that as a technical term, right, the rabbis. But it also can stand for a place in the world to come is a sign that you have done the right thing. It can be understood symbolically, okay? So notice here that already the commandment to rebuke has been subject to qualification. Without the qualifications, I might say, you know, if one of you did something wrong, I can go up to you and just say, God, how dare you do this, and so on, and not worry about when I've done it, where I've done it, in public, in private, have I overdone it, am I too angry? So what we've just read is now introducing the topic of the ethics of rebuke. I have to do this the right way. In private, speak to the offender gently and tenderly, and point out that he's only speaking for the wrongdoer's only good, to secure for him life in the world to come. If the latter accepts the rebuke, well and good. If not, he should be rebuked a second and a third time. And so one is bound to continue the admonitions till the sinner assaults the admonisher and says to him, go away. I refuse to listen anymore. Whoever is in a position to prevent wrongdoing and doesn't do so is responsible for the iniquity of all the wrongdoers whom he might have checked. If you do something wrong and I don't say to you, you've done it, then the next wrong thing you do, I am co-responsible for that because I didn't bring you around. So if you go back to the Leviticus passage, you at the top, you shall not hate your kinsfolk in your heart, reprove your kinsman, but incur no guilt because of him. This is the meaning of that. But it turns out it's only the first way I can incur guilt. Let's go on. Number 8. He who rebukes another must not at first speak to the offender harshly, so as to put him to shame. As it is said, you shall not suffer sin because of him. This is the second meaning in the Leviticus passage at the top, but incur no guilt because of him. If I don't rebuke, I'm guilty for what transpires. If I rebuke badly, I have incurred guilt for doing it the wrong way. I mean, when you think about what can hold a society together, given what is natural, rivalries, differences of opinion, often getting very, very intense, how does a society diminish, control these sorts of disputes without tearing the society apart? It has to find a way to bring the sinner around, but it can't turn it over to the individual or the institution that does it unless that individual or institution is also warned about doing it incorrectly. If I take rebukes literally and I really let you have it, what does that do for healing the relationship and helping the society become, to that degree, healthier? So we have to think about not only calling people's attention to what is wrong, but not creating more problems by doing so. And isn't it psychologically profound to say that, you know, if X wronged me, oh, now I feel very privileged to say to this person, come on, I'm not like you. So haughtiness can become a problem here, which also undermines the social fabric. So I have to recognize that there are ethics on both parts, to the doer and to the one who is trying to bring the doer back into society. Our rabbis explain this text as follows. Since it might have been supposed that you are to rebuke the sinner till he changes color, therefore it is said, and don't bear sin on his account. Hence the inference that it's forbidden to put an Israelite to shame, especially in public. Don't embarrassing people. The rabbis say embarrassing somebody is tantamount to shedding blood, on the analogy that when you embarrass somebody, they blush. And so in a symbolic way. So we have an obligation to maintain civility, even if we're upset with somebody. Although one who puts another's to shame is not punished with stripes, it's still a grave offense. And thus the sage says, he who shames another in public has no portion in the world to come. One ought therefore to beware of publicly shaming anyone, whether he be young or old. One should not call a person by the name of which he feels ashamed. And so the rabbis are on a roll here. And so here's some other stuff you shouldn't be doing as well. Don't call a person by the name of which he feels ashamed, nor relate anything in his presence which humiliates him. Social ethics. Righting the ship. Next page, page 5. We still have 2 commandments to deal with. Vengeance and a grudge. And so now Rashi is going to talk about those 2. You shall not avenge. If one says to another, lend me your sickle, and he replies, no. And the next day, the latter says to him, lend me your hatchet. And he retorts, I'm not lending this to you, just as you refuse to lend me your sickle. This is vengeance. And what about bearing a grudge? If one says to another, lend me your hatchet, same situation. And he replies, no. And on the next day he says to him, lend me your sickle. And he replies, here it is. I'm not like you, because you would not lend to me. This is bearing a grudge. Because he retains enmity in his heart, even though he does not actually avenge himself. This is pretty sophisticated, isn't it? Which do you think, by the way, is worse? Anybody have a thought about that? The grudge. Why?
Last longer.
The grudge lasts longer. Hey, if I ask you give me your sickle, you say no, I say no back. The next day, done. Whereas hey, I'm not like you. I'm still carrying it around. This is not good for the social well-being, is it? So both are problems. So notice, if we just quickly go back to page 4, what we have here is a mini narrative. Don't hate. Here are the ways to eliminate it. Chastise your fellow. Don't incur guilt on account of him. Don't take vengeance. Don't bear a grudge. Love your fellow as your heart. So this can be seen not only as a full map of how to do it, but a kind of outline about how to do it. Find a way to mediate the issue and get it off the community's agenda. So look, we still have the issue here. Now we're on page 5 of what does it mean to love your neighbor as yourself. Here's Maimonides and the laws of ethical dispositions. It's incumbent on everyone to love each individual Israelite. Okay, so look, this is the Middle Ages. And so the communities, not so much in Sephardic lands, but a modern sage will say to love all your human beings. So some of this is sociologically oriented. It's incumbent on everyone to love each individual Israelite as himself. As it is said, love your neighbor as yourself. Hence a person ought to, and here's what love is, Speak in praise of his neighbor, and be careful of his neighbor's property, as he is careful of his own property, and solicitous about his own honor. Whoever glorifies himself by humiliating another person will have no portion in the world to come. By the way, love here is not an emotion. Love is an action grounded in respect. Speak in praise of his neighbor. Be careful of his neighbor's property. And Maimonides continues it in another portion of the Mishnah Torah at the bottom of the page. The following positive commands, there are positive commandments and negative commandments, do's and don'ts. The following positive commands were ordained by the rabbis: visiting the sick, comforting mourners, joining a funeral procession, dowering a bride, escorting departing guests, performing for the dead the last tender offices, acting as pallbearers, going before the bier, making lamentation for the dead, digging a grave, burying the body, causing the bride and bridegroom to rejoice. An interesting array of ideas here, providing them with all their needs. These constitute deeds of loving kindness, performed in person and for which no fixed measure is prescribed. Although all these commands are only on rabbinic authority, they are implied in the precept, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That is, what you would have others do to you, do to him who is your brother in the law and in the performance of the commandments. Love as an emotion is self-contained. It's about me. Love as an action is a way of reaching out to others and creating relationships of trust, of generosity. All of this is not theoretical. This is a way to cultivate a thriving community, which is always riven by problems, and so human nature being what it is, right? Okay, let's go on. 6, embracing hope. So what I've brought here is the very last sentences of the entire Bible, okay? So it's always a very good question. How does an author end his or her work? Okay? So in some sense, when it's over, it's over. Well, the Bible is an attempt to feed the Jewish community down through the ages. So here it is. And in the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, so this is the year 540 before the Common Era. The Persians have just beaten the Babylonians. And in the first year of King Cyrus, by the way, the prophet Isaiah calls King Cyrus God's Messiah, God's anointed, for a very tangible reason. He's the one that allowed the Israelites to return home. Not all of them did. And in the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, when the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah was fulfilled, the Lord roused the spirit of King Cyrus of Persia. By the way, nobody would be more surprised by this claim than King Cyrus. That it's God who roused him to do this. You know, hey, King Cyrus, you know why you did this? No, I was building an empire. I was defending the borders. You think that God made me do this? No. Rouse the spirit of Cyrus of Persia. By the way, there are many different ways of writing history. There's intellectual history, there's great man theory, there's economic theories of history, there's geographic theories of history. Why was Britain never invaded until until the world wars? Because it's an island. Geography is destiny. This is a religious understanding of history. There are many ways of understanding history. This is one of them. God is behind these activities. And in the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, when the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah was fulfilled, the Lord roused the spirit of King Cyrus of Persia to issue a proclamation throughout his realm by word of mouth and in writing as follows. Thus said King Cyrus of Persia, the Lord God of heaven has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has charged me with building him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Any one of you, of all his people, the Lord his God be with him, and let him go up. So, the Tanakh, the Bible, ends on a note of hope. The exile, long predicted by the prophets, which was part of Jewish history for 70 years, now is ending, and the author, in a way, leaves us hanging. The last thing that is being announced is permission to go back and to start again. So the Bible ends on a note of hope. I circled the last Hebrew word. Did I circle it in yours too? Yeah. It's vaya'al. Ya'al is a verb that means to go up, from which we get the word aliyah. Okay? So this is not just going up. There are two meanings of aliyah, physical and spiritual. Spiritual, I'm moving from diaspora to center, right? Physically, if you go to Jerusalem, you're actually going up. So aliyah has two components to it. But this is really the first aliyah, which presages future goings up. Okay? So the Bible ends on a note of hope, which is a good way to end a book, isn't it? In other words, the story isn't over. I just had to stop here. In the halachic requirement that one, this is from David Hartman's A Living Covenant, that one recite a benediction, blessed is the true judge on receiving bad tidings. Okay, so this is counterintuitive. I've been the recipient of a tragedy, God forbid, and I've got to bless God as the true judge. So what's going on here? Does not imply that it should be possible in principle to explain to the mourner why the death of a beloved parent or child was necessary to the divine plan, and therefore ultimately rational and just, right? Our inclination, I don't know about you, when I go into a house of mourning, I want to try to make the mourners feel better. It was for a reason. I try explanations. No, this passage is saying that is not what we should be doing. That death remains a violation of all of one's longings for the reasonable and just within human life. Rather, the benediction can be seen as a means of affirming one's determination to continue to live by the covenant despite every disappointed expectation. This is what I call the great nevertheless of the Jewish tradition. I do not deny or minimize the reality, but I turn from an act that is cognitive. What am I to make of this? Because what I'm going to make of it is, hey, don't tell me this is not a calamity. This is an awful thing that has happened to my loved one and to me. But nevertheless, I'm going to turn from what is the case to what can be the case. A determination. Determination is an act of will. To continue to live by the covenant despite every disappointed expectation. To me, that is enormously heroic. And it happens at different stages, of course, in the process, if it happens at all. The same affirmation appears more fully in the Kaddish, which mourners pronounce at the graveside and repeatedly during their period of mourning. magnified and exalted, Yitkadava, Yitkadash, Shemay, name, shame, Rabbah, great. Magnified and exalted be his great name in the world which he has created according to his will. Why should I say that when I'm looking over the empty grave right in front of me, when I feel like nothing worse, less than to do this? And what is being suggested here is, just to say it this way, maybe I'm going to overstate it. Hope is an obligation. We have people to nurture, we have things to do. It's not that all of a sudden you are hopeful, but you're making a move to the next stage without qualifying the calamity, without letting go of the mourning, but it's a way of turning. Let's go to the bottom. The declaration of faith affirms that the tragic has not destroyed one's commitment to live by covenantal aspirations. It proclaims a resolve to maintain the struggle to bring the covenantal mitzvah to history, despite the death and suffering that are ever-recurring features of the human condition. This is what I meant at the very beginning in the title, Climbing the Ladder. And this ladder is hard to climb, but the resolve to continue our obligations to ourselves and to each other. Not everything needs to be explicable, not even in principle, in order to live with faith in the covenant. The world pursuing its normal course is accepted as the world in which it is given to us to live our short life, and in which we must decide either to live or not to live by the covenant of Torah. Those lines are just so powerful, aren't they? Part of it is that life does not support this move very well. All the things that befall us. But here's this idea that hope is one of the major values in the Jewish tradition and in many traditions. I mean, the Christian tradition, I don't want to simplify it, but hope for an afterlife is another way of living it in the sense that things can be better. So, there's number 7, but I'll leave that to you. What I've basically done there is talk about both our obligation to the state of Israel. Let's just look at the perspectives on page 7. The proponents of tight alignment argue that external threats and high stakes require internal cohesion, viewing vocal opposition during wartime as potentially damaging to security and morale. We don't criticize Israel during a time of crisis and need. Imperative 1. Internal debate. Israeli society features a long tradition of sharp public political self-critique, with domestic media, legal institutions, and citizens frequently challenging government policies. So, national unity and internal debate are what I'm going to call the combination of A and not A. Absolute support, absolute fidelity to the values by which we have an obligation and permission to judge what is going on. And they are in inextricable tension with one another. That's why it's awfully hard to speak in public about it, because unless you have a very nuanced position, look, these are two categorical imperatives. A categorical imperative is do it. A non-categorical imperative is, in a certain situation, do it. If then, categorical imperative, it does not matter what the situation is. There's right and wrong. And this is what we face, isn't it, in a time of stress and tension. The tug and pull of two categorical imperatives. But I label number 6 supporting two things: Israel and its values, which captures, it seems to me, the tension. So, quick run through of these things. Let's a few minutes of conversation. 2 questions, 2 things to think about. What questions is all it has raised for you? And, just to put it this way, what values did I miss? Which ones that I didn't include would you put in here as the things we should be thinking about and committing ourselves to as this high holiday season unfolds? Yes?
I'd say embracing all people, people who are different than you are, and don't judge unless you've walked in their shoes, which most people have not.
Great.
And that's a big one for me.
And I think that made in God's image, all people made in God's image, begins to get there, but it's not explicit.
And I never really understood the made in God's image, because some people, God's image is male. For me, God's image is not human, it's spiritual. And
Okay.
so you're not being made in the physical image, but in the spiritual image of kindness and embracing and loving and so forth.
And I think that's the meaning we'd have to infer. It's not that God has 2 ears, but something about the spirituality. But it is the idea of absolute, not compromisable value. Circumstances are irrelevant to my value, is I think what is being articulated here. That's why I like the male and female as humanity. Michael?
Well, I'm not sure how clear it is about our responsibility to be, or our green responsibility. I don't know how you want to, what word you want to do to describe it. But I don't think it's explicit. It's implicit somewhere. But I'd like to see more.
So you would have liked to have seen something like that as one of these things. Yeah, and it's implicit in the Garden of Eden story. Tend the garden and preserve it. La'avda ul shamra. Shamra means to protect. And so it's not made explicit here, but it really could have been added. Jordan?
Repairing the world.
Okay, yes. All right, very good. Tikkun olam, yes. Bev? Yeah.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Okay, the golden rule.
The rule kind of thing that I learned about when I was in Copenhagen's classes, called the platinum rule.
Which is?
And it's do unto others as they would like having done unto them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. That's a good point. I had a professor of philosophy many years ago who said the golden rule is quite a flawed rule. I'm the one who do unto others as you would have them do unto you. When I go into somebody's house, I would like them to hand me a martini. Does that mean I should do that to them? So but some of us looked at, I'm sorry, yeah. Jonathan Sacks, in his wonderful book, Not in God's Name, talks about the golden rule in terms of the prisoner's dilemma, which is a bit complicated, but it allows us to reach out beyond our own group to the stranger, is how he understood it. Okay, so the golden rule, but also maybe variations on it.
That is for end-of-life doulas. That is called the platinum rule.
Okay.
Because people go in to visit the dying and want to tell them they look good or do what they want. And if they don't want anybody to come, don't go.
Yeah.
I was thinking
Gratitude as a value, very good, very good. The ecological imperative, gratitude, repairing the world, your idea of the spirituality of all people. Great. We've got 4 things. Billy? I knew you as Billy. You're going to be Billy forever. Good. Okay. Tolerance. Gosh, I should write some of this down. Okay, that's 5 ideas. Others? Okay, very good. Okay, there are, yeah, obviously complexities. This is schematic. Very good. What do we have? Ecology, tolerance, platinum rule. What else did we do? Tikkun olam, spirituality. So to my 6, we can add another 5. You know, thank you very much for those. So, you know, we do this on Elul because we're thinking about the holidays to come, and plenty to think about in terms of how we're doing as individuals and as a community, which is really what the holidays are about. So, thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you on the holidays. No, I don't need them. Thanks.
You made it through, Roger.
I'm sorry? I did. There's hope. Yep. But that was great. I mean, 5 new ideas came forward in the last 5 minutes. Yeah. How's it going?
It's going fine. How's it going with you?
Good.
Okay, excellent. Roger, I have a problem with the word righteousness, because that to me, everything is like a noun. It's definite, it's defined. Righteousness is too subjective. What is righteousness? I mean, each one of these things, people heard, that's a noun. It's defined. Jewish families defined.
Yes.
Righteousness is not. Righteousness is in the eye of the beholder.
You remember where it is? Here, I think it's
Righteousness.
on page 4, page 2. Yeah, I do know what you mean.
Pursuing righteousness.
Pursuing righteousness.
Right,
Ah,
so-
I get it.
Thank you for a wonderful evening.
Oh, thanks.
Bye, Billy.
So great to see you.
Billy.
You know, every time I drive down Van Aken, I notice his house.
Oh,
Eh,
that's right.
It's the truth, isn't it?
That's the absolute truth.
Playing baseball at Moreland School.
Oh, the greatest of memories.
Isn't it though?
Did
Oh
you
my
go to
God.
Harlem? I didn't know that.
You're class of 59.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I student taught with
Much older
Francis
than you.
Method.
Oh my gosh. But better looking.
I student taught with Francis Method.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Mrs. Method. She was rough.
Yes.
Oh, did you have Mrs.
I
Method?
I
had
student
her.
taught with
I
her.
did.
Oh, you
she,
did?
She was my advisor.
Wow.
I thought she was amazing.
Who can forget her?
No, I can't.
No, it's
She
very.
still haunts me.
Oh, me
Oh.
too. Me too. Me too. I saw her at the grocery store once.
Did you
I thought,
really?
God, my whole world fell apart.
That's great. Have a great holiday.
Thanks, you
We'll
too.
see you.
Great
We'll
to see you.
I didn't know, I worked with Linda Klein at, in Motion. We worked together.
Oh, how nice is that?
She said you're her neighbor.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Linda and, yeah. We know very well what his name is.
Steve,
Steve. Yeah. Oh, very good. Yeah. They are our neighbors.
worked together, yeah.
Yeah.
Great presentation.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very
So
much.
nice to
Loved it.
open my eyes and to see you guys here, all of you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take
See ya.
care, bye care. Take care.
Rabbi, I had a question I wanted to ask, and it was in relation to your discussion about the maintaining the Jewish people, and so my question is, if we want to have a thriving Jewish population, how do we do that in relation to the wider world? The wider world, as you said, starting, which is God created humankind, not just the Jews,
Exactly,
but Christians, Muslims, everybody.
absolutely.
So, what is the relationship? What is the tension?
Well, that's it. I mean, what I tried to do here was to recognize that there are tensions among these values. This is not a harmonious, automatically harmonious. So one always has to balance the few and the many. I mean, we care about our community. I
Right.
mean, take anything. Take randomly baseball. I root for I root for my team,
Right.
but that doesn't mean I don't value it and so on. So it is a balance, but we ought to be able to. It's just like the family and society. The family is the first part of the society. The family feeds the society, so there can be a reciprocal relationship. A particular group can feed the larger,
Right.
and the larger can help to protect and preserve.
Right. That's
But
a good way of putting it.
It's not an automatic way to understand it. You have to think it through.
Well, like everything, it's not black and white.
That's it. Right. Right. There are many values.
Right. Okay.
Very good. Thanks.
So how would you define righteousness?
Right. I guess morality,
Okay.
righteousness, doing the right thing. Of course, it requires a definition.
Right,
That's
it
right.
does.
But it introduces the moral realm in terms of behavior.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll go with that.
All right. How you guys doing?
We're doing
Is your house finished yet?
Roger, it is. It is. There's just a few things that need to be done. The walls are up. They're painted. You don't see the pipes. You don't see the studs.
Wow.
Well, you know why? Because, well, 2 years ago, Ronnie was really sick, and then I got really sick. I had a fractured femur.
Oh.
The same year, 2024, we knew we had to do something because if we left it to our kids who don't live in town, it's a white elephant. They're
That's a
stuck.
good point.
So we had to finish.
Oh, that-
So I'm at a point where if we had to sell the house now, we could do it.
Oh, and was that the main incentive?
Oh, yeah,
How
for our
nice
kids.
is that? You could live that way.
I could. I mean, I've lived with it for 54 years.
Yes,
Why
you
not?
would. Right.
But now we're 56 years with pretty much finished.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It's,
No, that's a very good point. You know, I just did a funeral for somebody who was a pack rat and had a garage on top of a garage. And I just spoke to his widow today, and she is really going crazy.
she
because
needs help. She needs some
She's
help.
reaching out to family and others.
Yeah, she needs somebody professionally to organize it for her.
And also, we talked a bit about putting it up for auction, having
Yeah.
an auctioneer come out and sell the stuff.
She just needs some direction, so that's great.
For sure, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But that's another good example of
Right.
we can't die with everything in place.
No, but I'm trying.
Manage our deaths.
Take care.
Great to see you.